Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all my Tistina Yugioh deck profile for August 2023. Tistinas were the new TCG exclusive deck we got in the Duelist Nexus booster set. The whole deck focuses on being able to special summon out the Tistina monsters if you control another one, and then also utilizing face down monster plays with the many different level 10 boss monsters we got, and then just the easy special summon for the lower level monsters we have in the deck. Also being able to search out the different Tistina spell and traps. So we only have a little bit of support so far for the deck from the Duelist Nexus booster set. So it's a pretty generic deck profile for what we have. The deck is still trying, I think, to show what its play style is. We may have a better idea of it when we get to the newer support that the deck hopefully gets in the Age of Overlord booster set. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the main deck monsters, we're running 3 copies of the Crystal God Tistina. With this card, during your main phase, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Crystal God Tistina once per turn. So you have the flip power that I mentioned before, thanks to this card, in the form of just when this card is in play during the main phase, and then when your opponent sends it to the graveyard. You have 2 options to flip their monsters face down, so even if they're able to get over the first wave, they have the flip effect that they have to make use of for the other one. I'd say the biggest weakness to the deck, obviously, are link monsters, since they cannot be, flipped face down, but you still have the option to send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard, so then you have the option to at least disrupt those plays while still make use of the Crystal God Tistina, being able to then send the face-up link monsters to the graveyard that weren't flipped face down. And then we're also running the 3 copies of Demigod of Tistina. This card is a step down from Crystal God Tistina. If you control a Tistina card, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can add 1 Tistina spell or trap from your deck to your hand. During your opponent's turn, if you control a Crystal God Tistina quick effect, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. You go and use each effect of Demigod of Tistina once per turn, so you have the flip option again for those monsters, disrupting some of your opponent's plays, then sending any of the remaining face-up cards that your opponent controls to the graveyard. And it's face-up cards, so if your opponent has any face-up continuous spells or traps, they'll be gone as well, thanks to this card. With some of the other Tistina cards that we control being our Hound of Tistina, which I'm also running 3 copies of. This card's in your hand or graveyard, and you control a light Tistina monster. You can special summon this card. You go and use this effect of Hound of Tistina once per turn, and Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face-down defense position monster. So having some of the bigger boss monsters be able to flip those cards face down means that you can at least then swing into your opponent directly with the other Tistina monsters that you control in the deck, thanks to those setups that you may have against your opponent. Just being another special summon resource, you can use these also as tribute fodder for the other Tistina cards, with the other lower level one being our Sentinel of Tistina. Now they do vary in levels compared to the other Tistina monsters, which are both our options for our level 10 plays in the deck for our summons. But the level 3 Sentinel, if it's in your hand or graveyard, you control a light Tistina, you can special summon this card, and you can target 1 Tistina monster or face down card you control, destroy it, and then add 1 Tistina card from your deck to your hand. Being able to search out some of the bigger boss monsters thanks to this card, and then being able to target a Tistina monster or a face down card you control, so even just a card you set on the field can be destroyed with Sentinel to search out for another one. And then I also run 3 copies of Supreme Sea Mare. With this card, in its normal or special summon, you can send 1 Aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for Supreme Sea Mare. And during your end phase, you can tribute this card to target an Aqua monster in your graveyard, except for Sea Mare, and add to your hand. So you have the recycle power using Sea Mare to add back any of your other Tistina cards from the graveyard back to your hand, but being able to set up cards like Sentinel and also Hound from your graveyard to then be special summoned, since it's in the hand or graveyard and you control a light Tistina. As soon as you get that other bigger boss monster on the field, you're able to then special summon out the monsters from our graveyard that we set up thanks to Supreme Sea Mare. And then for the rest of the main deck monsters, the 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, just the hand trap of choice for the deck to stop any of our opponent's search plays, and also the 2 copies of Gamma Seal for being able to tribute out some of the other monsters your opponent may not be able to get around with some of the Tistina monsters we have in the field. So then you can just tribute out that monster, giving them the kaiju that they have, and then have another way to easily get over those cards, or at least have another card to flip face down thanks to your Tistina monsters. And then moving on now to the spells, I run 3 copies of the Divine Domain Tistina. It has Tistina in the name, so it can be searched. During your main phase, you can send 1 Tistina monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then your opponent controls 3 or more face-up cards. You can special summon 1 Crystal God Tistina from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Divine Domain Tistina once per turn. And if this card is in your field zone, is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can special summon 1 Tistina monster from your deck or graveyard. So you have the destruction power to avoid of your opponent making it not to want to touch this field spell, because then you'll get your main go-to boss monster, but also just being able to send 1 from the deck to the graveyard adds to the Sea-Mare play on top of having the send off of that monster. And then also just having your opponent set up a board means you can activate this card and then immediately get out your main go-to boss monster, which on top of that can also be used to then set up your other cards in the graveyard as well to special summon out onto the field. I also run 3 copies of Breath of Tistina with this continuous spell during your main phase. You can normal summon 1 Tistina monster in addition to your normal summoner set. You can only gain this effect once per turn, and you can target 1 face-up monster you control, or if you control a light Tistina monster, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field instead, change that monster to face-down defense position, then add 1 Tistina card from your deck to your hand. So more search power for that setup. Having the additional normal summon means you can also add some of your higher level Tistina cards to your hand to then tribute out for that additional normal summon. For more of the flip face down power that the deck revolves around, we're also running the 3 copies of Book of Eclipse, being able just to change all monsters in the field to face down defense position. So you really don't have much of a quick play response, but you can still use this card on your opponent's turn to stop any of the plays they may want. They will be flipped up during the end phase and given draw power as well, but then you still have a way to interrupt any play your opponent may have tried to do, and then just having to deal with the extra draws that they get the end of the turn as well. And then also 2 copies of Book of Moon. If they're just going for 1 specific monster, Book of Moon can be used especially against like Pirelli to then just flip that card face down before they go into their rank up play. With the rest of the one-ofs for the spells being 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, the 1 Call by the Grave, and the 1 Terraforming. If instead of Upstart Goblin you want to run Monster Reborn for more of a special summon from the graveyard for your Tistina cards, you can always replace this card for that 1 spot. For the traps, I run the 1 copy of Signs of Tistina. You really only need the 1 since it can be searched with the other cards we run in the deck. Activating this card by targeting 1 face-up monster on the field, special summoning it as an effect monster, Aqua Light level 10, with the following effects also. It's still a trap during your opponent's turn. When that target leaves the field, destroy this card, and during your opponent's turn when this card leaves the field, destroy that target. So you have more destruction plays along with the special summon power of this continuous trap. I am in debate on what I want to run between that card and Metal Reflect Slime. You have more of a defensive card in the form of Metal Reflect Slime, while you have more of a destruction card thanks to this card, both being level 10 monsters. They work well with the other Tistina boss monsters if you were to go for an overlay play with any of those monsters that we run, in addition of these traps, with the rest of the traps being the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Like I said, we're going for more of a generic lineup to work with this deck currently. So until we get more support, we may see more of a meshed out deck and what we can go forward with the other support we'll get in the future. For the extra deck, we are running the 1 copy of Gustav Max, the 1 Sky Palace Gongar Die, the 1 number 81, and the 1 Zeus for the rank 10 plays, since we have the level 10 monsters being the main form to go into. If you want to run some rank 4 monsters to work with Sea-Mare and Hound of Tistina, that's always an option as well, to put in Baguska or, Tornado Dragon, Abyss Dweller, you name it. And if you were to do so, you can take out some of the link monster spots, like the 1 Underclock Taker, the 1 Barricade Board Blocker, the 1 IP Masquerena, the 1 Heat of the Fire Charmer, the 1 Lena, Asa, and Win as well for the Link 2. Some of these spots can be replaced for, rank 4 Xyz monsters if you wish in the deck, with the rest of the Link monsters being the 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, the 1 Apollosa, the 1 Access Code Talker, and the 1 Underworld Goddess. All more of a generic lineup. There's really not anything specific for the extra deck, and most of the time you will go in to the level 10 or rank 10 monster monsters more using those level 10 monsters. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, the field spell Divine Domain definitely does help with your overall setup, because then you can just activate this card, and then during the main phase, send a Tistina monster from your deck to the graveyard. So then you can use this card to send Hound of Tistina to the graveyard. And then it all comes down to if your opponent controls more face-up cards than you, or 3 or more face-up cards. So it doesn't even have to be monsters, just face-up cards to begin with. You're just going to see monsters more often than not. This will let you special summon the Crystal God Tistina to the field, thanks to that card. Then you'll special summon out your go-to light monster, and with Hound of Tistina in the graveyard, if you control a light Tistina monster, which you do, you can special summon this card onto the field. And then, once per turn, Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face-down defense position monster. So then you'll use Crystal God Tistina to flip your opponent's face-down monsters, and then you can attack directly with both of these cards, hitting for 38 damage total. So then you have the option, since you haven't even normal summoned yet, to summon out your Supreme Sea Mare. Sea Mare can then send your Sentinel of Tistina to the graveyard, special summoning out since you control the light one as well, thanks to the field spell. And then also, targeting a Tistina monster or face-down card you control, destroy it, then you can add one Tistina card from your deck to your hand. So with this card, you also have the option to then have the face-up monsters your opponent control face down for more additional direct burn damage, thanks to the direct attacks that these cards can provide. And that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, it's a deck that we're still in the midst of seeing what the full potential of Tistina can be. And until we get more support, it's going to be something that's definitely tested around with other archetypes until we can see what this deck can fully do. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.